Welcome back everybody to the 7th episode of my Wolfram Park series on Planet Coaster. In this video I'm going to be showing off some of the building and design work for Venice, Italy section of my park. There's quite a lot of content I ended up cutting out simply because I spent hours and hours messing with the new tools and assets that are in the Alpha 2 release of the game. And I spent a frankly annoying amount of time just sort of rotating objects and putting them against the walls, trying to get the sort of real-life Venetian look that those types of buildings have. If you don't know what I'm talking about, they sort of have a yellow and orange painted stucco look. And right now we only have the beige stucco walls. So you have to try and put different objects over top of the walls to get different colors and some textures to vary the buildings so they don't all look the same. It'll make it look a little more realistic and not so similar and bland. Now what I'm working on here is the first building that'll be in the Venetian area. This is actually going to be a restaurant with a small balcony area or patio actually on the backside that will be along a small canal where people can eat, but there'll also be indoor tables and food stalls and all that. Now what I'm working on here is the sort of iconic recessed doors and windows that a lot of Venetian buildings have. It's kind of hard to make these, especially on the buildings that I'm going to be using the stone pillar type of thing that they added in the newest update. You could see those on the corner building that I was just working on a few minutes ago. Because of how long they are, and I tend to use them sideways to make the buildings have sort of overlapping stones like a real building would. It's really hard to create a sunken door or window on that texture simply because there's so much space. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think you understand. Using them long ways makes it hard to place the doors and windows in a realistic looking way. And another key aspect of Venetian buildings is their square windows. Because they're built straight into the stone facades, they're all square and usually sunken, and there's not really any square windows in the game right now. Almost all of them have some sort of curved or ornate decoration around them that doesn't fit with the theme very well. So I end up having to flip a lot of the windows over and using them twice to use the square bases to then make the tops of the windows square also. The one that you just saw me using is actually about the best one, and one of the few that works real well. If I'm able to create more sunken windows on the future buildings, it'll be easier because a lot of the extra stuff around the edges that kind of ruins the theme will be hidden within the wall. But it does take quite a bit of planning and trial and error to get those sunken features to work well. And you can see here trying to get these shuttered windows to have a square top. I'm actually having to use the edges of the tiny glass block type window. I'm really not sure what it is. But using the stone edges from that to create the square top for these windows. And I actually end up using the small glass block type window quite a lot in the bridge project that will be in the next video, because there's not a lot of stuff available yet to do small stone work and sort of like stone edging and things, but the edges of this window work really well. It's nice and small, easy to use, and hopefully it's not too polygon heavy or anything, so it's not too much of a performance impact. And one final note about the Venetian theme. You can see above these doors here this sort of windowsill type thing. Pretty much all the windows and doors in the Venice type buildings have this feature, but there's not a standalone piece in our set of items yet. So I have to use the large facade piece. I'm not sure what it's called. You can see it. You saw it highlighted there a minute ago. but I have to sink it into the upper story wall, which means the upper story is hanging over the lower story, but that's why I had to use the sort of angled stone piece to hide that fact. But it has to be sunken in order to utilize the ledge that's on the bottom of it. Hopefully in future updates this piece will be its own separate piece so that we can have these sort of ledge pieces that are much easier to use, because a lot of buildings have things like that, but it's hard to hide the rest of that facade piece. Now, I really want to thank the developers for continuing to improve the path system. I was pretty good at it, and it was somewhat easy to use in the Alpha 1, but in Alpha 2 it's just so much more easy to use. It's a lot more flexible, and even though it still likes to connect back on itself a little more aggressively than I want, I'm still able to do a lot with it, especially here in this restaurant area where you can see I've sort of cut out all of the edges and left the smallest amount I could for these little poles that are sticking up that I'm hiding with the tables. But I was able to make that all a straight edge without having it show the wooden border that's around the rest of the path, and just sort of blend in with the stone tile roof piece that's underneath. I was hoping to use the natural paths to go over the stone pieces, but because the path is actually elevated here, it still shows the stone texture that the rest of the path it's connecting to. I was trying to also raise the ground up, and I don't know, I looked at some pictures on the Planet Coaster forum, and they showed using the natural paths over top of roof pieces, but I'm really not sure how they got that, because it doesn't seem to work. The roof pieces just sink into the ground, you can't see them, or like if you're trying to elevate the natural path, then it obviously still takes on a texture and doesn't work. So I'm really not sure what I'm doing wrong or what, but I might play with that some more in the future. Now, while I'm fixing up the middle facade for this building, I just sort of wanted to talk about my idea for this area of the park. So right now I've laid out sort of a template for the San Marcos Square that I'm going to be somewhat recreating here. I already have all the areas laid out that I want to build in, and I have a general idea for what's going to go where. The biggest problem is going to be trying to make the cathedral and prison area, or I don't think it's a cathedral, I think it's a palace, but the palace and prison area, because they have a lot of detail, and there's nothing really in the game that can recreate the things that are on the real building. So I'll probably be taking some creative liberties with those. They won't be probably anywhere near close to the real life counterparts that I'll be going off of. And this area is going to feature at least one flat ride and a coaster that'll be back behind San Marcos Square. There's basically just going to be facades on the far side of the square that'll be covering up the coaster entrance, and I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be doing another indoor coaster for this area, or it'll probably end up being some sort of hybrid where there'll be a themed indoor area that'll then maybe blast out into the open area. I'm really not sure, but the coaster will pretty much be going along behind the back of San Marcos Square and tying into possibly the small Greek area that will be at the end of this side of the park. And it may even cross over some into the German, Swiss, Alpine area that's going just to the left that I'd been talking about in previous videos. Now, the Greek area I was just mentioning is new, because originally I was planning on spanning Venice all the way along the left side of the park. San Marcos Square is really big, and I was trying to keep it proportioned to the real one, so it was going to be pretty wide and pretty long, and it was going to end up taking basically the entire left side of the park. Plus I wanted to add some normal little canal areas to make it really feel like Venice, with a lot of clustered homes and a bunch of little canals that you would go over. But because of how big Sandmucker Square is, I really didn't want to dedicate that much room just to Venice. So I was looking at some other architecture things and saw the Greek Isle of Santorini. And those buildings are basically just white boxes with some blue features, which works out perfectly for this game because I can just use the basic white walls and get the exact look of those buildings. So that'll be a really easy little thing, but it'll also add a lot of character to the park because it's going to be a really hilly section with a lot of buildings sort of clustered around on these little hills, and a lot of winding paths and things. And I'll probably even run the Venice coaster through that area and maybe go around between the buildings or something. I also want to talk about why I took the wooden railing and sunk it into this building's walls for this middle facade. Pretty much I was just trying to get a different color on this building because I'm going to be using a lot of this beige stucco wall, and I really want to try and find a way to set these buildings apart from each other because there's going to be quite a few of them in this area, and I really don't want them all just looking like the exact same building pasted over and over. So I was just trying to really get a different color. I don't really care for how you can tell the texture is just repeating over and over, but I do like the darker brown color just to set it apart. And there's a few buildings that are almost like this, but obviously not this dark because they used a lot of brighter paints and things. But it was really just to set it apart and make it look different because there's not much else that can be put on these buildings to keep in that same vein of the Venetian look without, again, just making them all look the same. Some of the detail work to help set the buildings apart, like this rooftop garden I'm working on, or the slightly different windows on each building, will hopefully go a long way to separating them visually. I'll probably go back and, like I said, try to introduce the sunken windows into most of these buildings, just because it's a lot more realistic, and hopefully it'll make it look better. Some of you may have noticed that I've been putting the treasure chest prop around randomly. I'm kind of treating it as the Mickey Mouse silhouette that Disney uses, where they just kind of hide it around and see if people find it type thing. It was just a little extra thing that I was using just to make the park kind of unique. What I'm working on now is one of the small bridges that'll be around going over the canals. It's a pretty typical little bridge and really nothing fancy about it, but it fits into the theme and looks just like the type of bridges you would see in Venice. So not much to talk about here. So that's pretty much going to do it for this episode. One final thing that was just kind of stupid that I played with at the end here was trying to make some gondolas. Basically, I just had to take the little rowboat and flip it around and put the two butt ends together. It kind of works, and I'm going to have to end up using it just for some extra scenery around this area, but it does look kind of stupid. And in the next video, I'm going to be working on a recreation of the Rialto Bridge in Venice, and it will act as a gateway into this section of the park. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe, share it, all that good stuff, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next video. Thanks for watching.